Restaurant Unstoppable. What the most successful restaurateurs know that you don't. With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, owner and founder of Talula's Table and co-owner and founder of Talula's Garden, Talula's Daily, and The Love, Aimee Olexy. Aimee, are you feeling unstoppable today?
Unstoppable, definitely on this day. Yeah.
It's a gorgeous day, isn't it?
Yeah. Philadelphia unstoppable.
I really did pick a great week to come to Philadelphia. I can't wait to dive into your story because I know it's a good one, but let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
Mantras, they're all so positive mantras, but I was thinking, my body is not a temple, actually. I like to run it down, wear it out,
Yeah.
In the restaurant business, you're kind of like, let's not be easy on our bodies. Let's work really hard and run around and do the steps and carry the trays. So,
do you think that's something that needs to change?
I'd like it. I mean, for me, that's what's exhilarating. I was definitely a person who was like, I'm not sitting on my butt all day in a hole in a desk and under the lighting. So, but you push your body in this business. So
it's definitely a young person's game.
Yeah.
For sure.
The thing of like wellness and purity and stuff, the restaurants, they don't always allow for that.
There's a lot of truth to that. And I think that's kind of one of the things that like that's like kind of like the big trend right now is like we're learning so much about wellness, and the restaurant industry is all about generosity and giving, but we're giving and there's nothing left on the table for us, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're the vessel, so we're the vessel, and I often think about that, when you see this like our body is a temple, and we spend the time and we're like, moisturize and take an ice bath and stuff. And in the restaurant business, we're lucky if we're like slipping our clogs on and they match, you know, and you're like, you remembered to clean your socks.
Well, thanks for getting real, like right out of the gates, because that's the truth. That is the truth. And I'm really excited for your story because I know you're over 20 years in the industry.
Definitely.
You've been back in Philly for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
But where does it make sense to start your story, because was high school when you first started working in the restaurants, right?
I mean, it's for me, I was a little kid. I was probably maybe 14. I have a daughter who just turned 16, so I feel like I was a little younger than she is now. And my mom dropped me off at a little French cafe that was down the street. I remember I was always hustling. I had a paper route. I was babysitting. I was like the little kid in the neighborhood that could always, help around your house. And she suggested to me that maybe I go into this cafe and I could get a job. I remember my mom planted it. She said, walk in the door and ask if you can sweep floors. And, she was always kind of, keeping us busy. I walked in the door and I was like, do you need any help sweeping floors? And this woman who ended up becoming an incredible mentor and amazing woman in my life, Michelle Haynes, that owned that little cafe, she, in her thick French accent, was like, I do. And do you know how to do laundry? And I was like, yes, I can do that. And so then after school around 3 o'clock, I would go there around 3 to 8. And it was that time in a restaurant where it was, I didn't know it then, but it was in between lunch and dinner. And I did the laundry, and then I swept the floors. And then I started to, I started there. And, then years later, I was like making cassoulet.
Yeah, a little more. You said it was Michelle Haynes was this woman's name.
Yeah.
And she was a huge mentor.
Yeah.
What were the biggest lessons she taught you?
Hard work, this thing. And I think this is definitely a thread for me, but I was never afraid of hard work. And for me, I was always seeing that in my life and with, my family and my brothers. And we had jobs, we were working, and my parents were working. And, she was a woman who had a little French cafe, and she was in there morning, noon, and night. She'd sit there on the stool and read the newspaper and have her coffee, but she'd answer the phone for reservation calls.
Yep.
Then she would receive the orders and then do some prep. So, that was an image for me I was very comfortable with, and I still am. It's like your work for me is really my identity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't help but think, like, when you just hearing you say hard work, one of the things I love about this industry is that it's such, no matter who you are or what your background is, you have just as much as a fair shot, I feel like, as anybody who comes from like a privileged background, because regardless of what your privilege is, you still got to do the work, right?
It's so true.
And
You
it's
really,
an equalizer.
yeah, it is an equalizer in this this place, and a lot of the stuff we do, it's like it's very domestic, and it's just very, it's very basic activities that we do a lot in restaurants, in combination with these really creative and these, wildly like hospitable experiences and these really creative things. But then, we combine it with sweeping the floors and doing the laundry, and folding the napkins.
So you eventually you went to school, you majored in English Lit, and you were still working in restaurants.
Yeah.
And at this point you're managing. But before we move away from Michelle, is there any other key lessons she taught you?
The, wearing many hats, and maybe that was, I fortunately stepped into one of these little businesses. I walked into someone's little vision that was almost like a little household. And when you're, restaurants are also, they remind me of little households, but you did everything. So you answered the phone, you counted the money, you dumped the ice, you made ice, you cleaned the fridge, you did everything. You did cooking, you prep. So for me, like the mindset when I think of restaurants, the origin, even though now I have over 300 staff and I have restaurants. For me, it's very important for me to know how to do everything. And I love kind of teaching everybody to wear every hat and to see the big picture, because that perspective really shaped me. Yeah. I sometimes have trouble when I work with people that have like a tunnel, I appreciate their tunnel vision. If it's just maybe on a, particular aspect and they're really into cocktails or just a particular, wine program. Yeah. For me, they're like the house. You got to know the whole house.
Yeah. But I think that's like, there's a place for those people. And then there's also the Jill of all trades, which I've seen you be called. And I think there's a lane for that too. Yeah. And I think that if you are that type of person who likes to like move around and like, call an audible every night and just kind of get a little bit of everything, that's a good person to be if you want to be a restaurateur, because you have to, like you said, you have to know how to do every job. And it's important because, why do you think it's so important to know how to do every job? I don't want to say, I don't want you.
Well, it might not be that way for everyone. For me, that's my flow. Like I function when I'm doing everything, and I'm kind of top line, making sure I have my finger on every pulse in the building and everyone's pulse. I do think it's important because you're most relatable then. So when you're like managing people in different departments, and you're managing food runners and hosts and reservationists and, cool prep cooks and things like that, you have to be able to speak their language and be relatable to them. Yeah. So I like expect myself to be like that.
Yeah, you need to know their perspective.
Yeah, I have to walk up to the pastry chef and be able to talk about the quality of the strawberries. Yeah. So I have to like eat them, and be on top of it. So for me, it's like, that's actually very hard for me to keep up on, but I'm very, it's very important for me to keep up on. And I spend a lot of my energy making sure that I respect what they're doing by knowing what they're up to. Like, I got to know what they're making. And,
it's been said on the show before too, as you're scaling a business, before you outsource or delegate that role of every aspect of your business, you should do it yourself, because you never know when that person that you've delegated it to or that company you've outsourced to, you're going to cut the tie, and you have to get right back into doing it. So you need to know how to do everything, because you never know when you're going to have to fill that role too.
Yeah. I mean, this is, as a business owner, this is a thing that you lose sleep over, that I find, and I coach others when they're trying to get into this business. There's no like owning a food truck without running it. Like you can't run the lemonade stand.
You don't have to be the best at everything, but you do need to know how to get in there and hobble, if you have to for a little while.
Totally. I have a quick funny story about that. We use valets at Talula's Garden, and when I first hired valets, because our guests wanted them. I didn't really want to have valet, but people would, do you have valet? Do you have valet? And I was like, if I hire these valets, I have to make sure I know how to valet.
Yeah.
So I remember like one night I'm like, I'm just going to hang out with you guys and spend an hour. I want to learn how to do the tickets and make sure where do I put the keys. And then you guys just know how to drive every car.
Yeah. What if it's a standard?
I'm just like, wait a second.
That's funny.
But I'm like, I got to know how to valet.
When I first started this podcast, I was valeting part-time just because it was so flexible.
Yeah.
And they're always looking for people to pick up shifts. It's a fun job.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to with your story, I mean, there were a couple other restaurants I picked up on before you went out west to Denver. But is it worth diving into those experiences?
Yeah. I mean, you know, the cafe, Spring Mill Cafe was most seminal for me with Michelle Haynes. And, you know, then I started my journey of like learning all the jobs in a restaurant. So I worked.
So at this point, are you like, I'm going to be a restaurant person? This is what I want to do?
I was kind of finding my zone there. You know, I kind of thought I might combine it with my education. I loved writing, and I had a little idea where I might be into food writing or food history or studying the food scene in some way, maybe from the perspective of owning a restaurant.
I do think there's a lot of opportunity for if you do have that skill to use that skill, whether it be PR or just branding or copy or menu development, writing your menu. I think there is definitely verticals within this industry if you're a good writer to like leverage.
Yeah, I use it a lot. So I kind of was like, some way I'm going to bridge these things. And one of the natural and more civilized ways to do that, I was like, well, I might get into management or culinary. Yeah. So I was cooking and baking and I was doing bartending. You know, I was starting to work through the ranks of the restaurant. Then, then I ultimately moved out west. And I was living in Boulder and Denver area.
What brought you out there? What was the purpose?
I grew up with three brothers, one of four. And my brother Josh was an awesome skier, avid skier, and he had moved prior. We were like very tight, and he had moved to Steamboat and Crested Butte. So then I was like, well, I don't want to go too deep into the mountains like he did, but I was really interested in the service scene and stuff. So
my
I
sister spent
went
a year
to Boulder.
In Crested Butte. It's gorgeous out there. Yeah, but I know it's deep.
Yeah,
in there.
Definitely.
You're on an island in the mountains.
So I was like, well, let me be up in Boulder, in Denver, and kind of be part of a city that's starting to jump into the service industry.
Yeah, and that's I mean that's really when Boulder was starting to really take off.
Yes, absolutely.
I want to point out something that came by quickly, but it's worth bringing to the surface, is getting in and doing a little bit of everything. Early on in your career, like mix it up, get that perspective to find out what it is that truly lights you up. So at this point, what were you starting to realize? What was lighting you up at this point? What was exciting you?
I felt pretty comfortable with wine. I loved, again, travel. I understood region and travel well. Again, working in the French cafe, I was exposed to a lot of opening wine, and I had been around wine, so that was coming naturally to me. Cooking and my background in kind of working in the cafe and French cooking and speaking French was very comfortable for me. So that, I was leaning a little bit into this very homespun, like little chef owner concept, that sort of thing. And it was interesting that you asked.
When you say leaning into this, you started having the vision of this is what you want to do, or that's where you're going to look for
No,
work?
I was kind of a little bit thinking I still need to collect, these skills. But I was like, I need to know how to cook well, and then I need to understand how to run business. I started to notice that I knew this my whole life. I'm a high school dropout. I'm never conformed. I've just always been like that. I was always starting to see myself wanting to kind of control my own destiny. So I was watching people with their little businesses. I'd go to farmers markets, and I'd love little juice bars and coffee shops. I was really into little business, but I was wanting to combine that with food and wine. So I was studying those kind of places.
Okay. I mean,
I had no then I was just like, I was that kid, I was looking at places,
Yeah. I mean, the two restaurants I have on my list that you worked at in Colorado were Q's restaurant in Boulder and Pinzano's. Am I saying it correctly?
Yeah.
Or Pinzano. This is your first real, well, you were managing in other restaurants before, but was this an evolution for you? Was this a step up? Was it lateral?
Definitely. I had been bartending, and I had, I'd been kind of moving through serving and bartending and things like that before I moved, and when I was working through college for sure. Then out in Boulder, I at the Hotel Boulderado, I took a management job there, and it ultimately ended up being a general management promotion, and I ended up running, the different outlets in the Hotel Boulderado. And again, I was working with a chef owner that was an awesome guy, but he was also a person that was wearing a lot of hats. And I think that was a thing that I was always drawn to. I'd look for roles. I wasn't a person who would answer an ad ever. I would always be like, if I want to work at Victory Brewing, and I'd go talk to them, and I'd be like, hey, can I talk to the people? And I'd usually try to always go in for jobs that way. So when I worked at Q's, again, when you work with these chef owners, you get the exposure, they're always front and back of the house, or vice versa. Maybe it's like a sommelier owner, that sort of thing. So that was a really cool role. I had a big staff, and I think it was at that point that I realized I had a skill with managing staffs.
Okay.
And I had people skills, and I could work with big teams, and I had a little bit of a voice in leading them, and kind of exciting a team.
So take us deeper into that. How were you exciting these teams? What was it about leadership that was so natural to you? Paint that picture of doing the job well and what that looked like.
I mean, first from the perspective, that I was a person that I was cooking. I was in the front. I knew how to bartend. I knew how to cook, so I could talk to chefs. I could talk to the service staff. So my language that I spoke, I think, was really relatable. I was like, I was a, I would be on, I used to be on Dead Tour, and I sold clothes and sandwiches and stickers and stuff, and I could tell stories, and I could relate to a lot of people that have done some really interesting things. And in that Colorado scene, it was very easy for me to walk into or create a staff meeting and walk into it and say, guys, how are we going to work as a team and, clean the restaurant today, or get ready for the big Sunday service or the marathon, crowd or something like that. So, I liked allowing people to have their own voice in the show. So I would talk to people like I'm one of them, because I am one of them,
well, the word you used was relatable.
Yeah.
You became relatable, and part of that is becoming relatable is talking to people and finding similar interests and becoming like one, or you are one of them, like you're saying.
I don't know why it was, maybe we'll discover it when we talk here, but for me, it was very evident to people that my work was what I loved. I was thinking about it all the time, and not in an obsessive way, just it's what I was doing. It's what I thought about.
What is it about this that you love so much? We haven't really gotten into that. What is it specifically about food and beverage and hospitality that lights you up?
It's hard because if I take different pieces away, it is the whole experience that I love. And I love seeing the guests enjoy experiences. But for me, I have in my businesses, I have different places. I have cafes, I have restaurants. So I enjoy different experiences. For me, probably at the heart of it is the food. I mean, at the heart of it, you can never pull the food out of it for me. Mm-hmm. So I love all aspects of food. So, I'm really into coffee. I'm really into baking. I love the most beautiful baguette. I love cheese. I've studied cheese for many years. So I love makers and artisans, and I love chefs. I love their ability to create, and artists. And then I appreciate servers and their ability to run their own little mini sections all night long and to buy into a culture. Yeah. So for me, I like all the pieces so much, but if you pulled the plug on the food, that's where it all begins for me. There's a massive piece there.
Yeah, and the great thing about this industry, or just food in general, is you will, if you like to learn, you will never run out of material.
So true.
It's always it's so deep.
Yeah.
In just one genre, cheese alone, you'll
Absolutely.
never learn out. Wine alone, you'll never learn out.
My Talula's table. It is essentially a hybrid market business that every little profit center of the food business is represented in there. I mean, it's a cheese shop and a bakery and a fine dining restaurant.
Yeah, I want to dissect these businesses. I'm just trying to kind of figure out how you got there. But at this point, it sounds like you internalized and you know that this is what you want to do, and you're starting to get a little bit more intentional. You want to open your own place maybe, and you want it to be chef-driven and small.
Yeah. I kind of, maybe it's that thing where your core identity, kind of comes to bear at a certain time in your life. But, maybe it's that time when I worked in the cafe and that's what I saw and it lit a spark and that stuck there a bit. I definitely knew survival was really important to me. I didn't come from a family that had a lot and stuff. So in the restaurant, bartending, serving, you make money. So like I could see survival too. I was like, I think I can do this well. And I see how I can make a living and an income and save. And that was critical for me. So it was an answer to a lot. I was starting to be good at it and it worked.
How much were you saving? How much, and I think this is important to get into because I think a lot of young professionals don't quite know how to budget and manage and put money away if they do want to open a place.
Yeah.
But just to save and to have a little bit of a nest egg put away so you can have a security deposit or whatever it is.
Yeah.
How much were you really actively trying to save to open a restaurant?
I mean, I didn't know I was saving to open a restaurant per se.
Yeah.
But I am telling you, like, I was always the kid who was like, I'll pick up your shift.
Yeah.
Like, do you want me to work overtime?
Yeah.
I just, again, like I told you, I was the kid with the paper route, and I would always try to like make the tip.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about this industry.
Yeah.
You can choose to make $500 a week, or you can choose to make $1,000 a week. And there's always going to be somebody to give up a shift.
I have that speech with the staff a lot, especially during COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been a conversation that we've had a lot. And if there is the nest egg time, people have reflected on it recently. Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard to say because you forget back then, everything cost like 50 cents.
And there are shifts to pick up right now.
Yeah, but like, I'll tell you what. But no, I remember I used to be organized. I always I live off of like a list of things to do and stuff. I think I would always try to save like $500 a week. I know it sounds crazy, but I recall being like, I used to always think, if I could save $500 a week, that'll be $25,000. Yeah, it'd be $25,000 a year. If I have $25,000, and in 5 years I would have $100,000.
Yeah.
When you have nothing and you're not like, there's no nest egg, and your family isn't going to deliver some thing to you at some point in your life, you really like count it and live off of it.
Yeah, I highly recommend everybody listening to this. Every dollar that you make, take 10 cents and put it into a checking account.
Yeah.
Literally, at the end of each week, take 10% of everything you made, put it into a checking account that you never look at. And then 10 years from now, you're going to look at that checking account and there's going to be $100,000 in there and you'll never know what was missing.
It feels good. I don't want to be like, hey, money's the answer, but it's nice to have a level of security, to have a bit of free will.
Yep.
And, you got to recharge a little bit in this business. And I am the fastest recharger there is, but sometimes to recharge, you have to spend some money and take a minute and get away and not feel stressed about that.
Yeah.
Recharge.
Was that what you were doing in France? Was that intentional? Like, I love cheese and wine.
Yeah,
and
I did. Yeah. Okay. I intentionally went in the Southwest and studied in the Vaucluse, and studied wine and cheese. And
how long were you there?
6 months.
Okay. That's a good time.
Yeah. A good amount of time. And I did some things where I just took that risk. I was like,
how old were you?
22, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I like goat cheese farm there. I was like, can I stay with you for a little bit?
So you did all this, FYI, all the things we discussed up to this point you did before the age of 22.
Yeah.
Managed all these restaurants in Boulder. I think that's huge.
That's another thing I look back on. I think I was always a little bit,
Well, you dropped out of high school, so
I moved a little fast. Yeah. And I had 2 older brothers, and you just grow up faster, and I, I was a middle kid, and, your family's busy. And I remember that, I'd get kind of pushed into get a job, do those things. 'Cause, you watch other people do it. And that was the way it was then.
And I think it's so important, in this industry. The other cool thing about the restaurant industry is that it's a ticket to anywhere in the world.
100%.
Ticket to anywhere in the world. Do it while you can.
Even me, I'm doing all that I do right now, and I think about that once in a while because you're constantly reinventing it. And I'm like, I could at some point go work on a boat, somewhere and serve wine and cook them a special dinner.
For sure. If you're good at this job and you have a natural talent for this job, you can go anywhere in the world, get that perspective, travel, especially if you know you want to open a restaurant. Part of what people are buying is your story.
Yeah.
So if you are, just do it, look at it as an investment in your storyline.
Yeah.
And just the perspective you're going to get doing that, seeing different parts of the world, bringing all those different parts, having them influence and compound it within you to be something that you can extend later in life. Right?
Yeah. I mean, on the other hand, you know, I talk to some people in my staff, particularly, you know, the world can feel really big when you're young. And the idea of like, what am I going to do with my life is so daunting for so many people and young people in this business. And I often say, like, and I remind them, especially about food in the United States, I'm like, the U.S. is just a mecca for food. Sometimes when you're in this business, you know, there's some allure to like France and Spain and, you know, checking out the food scene everywhere. And I worry sometimes, people are like, if I don't go to France, you know, do I know anything about food? And I'm like, the food scene in the U.S. is awesome.
Yeah.
You know, like travel, take a quick trip in your like region and go find like killer crabs and a guy that's got an oyster farm.
Yep.
You know, there's so many cool ways to jump in this industry.
Yeah, for sure.
And to educate yourself at a young age and, you know, later in life.
So were you thinking you wanted to be a cheese and wine specialist? Was that kind of what you were thinking?
Yeah, I was kind of heady, and I would always like to dig into like things a little bit. And cheese, once I came back from France, you know, cheese, I was ahead of my time in cheese. Nobody around in the region was doing cool cheese courses, and there wasn't a bunch of American artisanal farms and things like that. So, and the few cheese shops that were around, you know, I was like, and they were amazing people, you know, Fairway Market and Murray's and stuff. But I was like, there's nothing like that around the Philadelphia area, you know. So I started to do stuff like that, and I talked to people about it, and then I would talk to people, and they're like, I love cheese.
Who doesn't love
You know
cheese?
what I mean? And they're like, you know, I went to France once, and I had this cheese, and I've never had anything like it. And I noticed cheese more than wine, you know, it just infected people. They were like, one time I had an omelet with this, it was so delicious.
Cheese is amazing.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing
Yeah.
that we've invented. So you were back in Philly in 1999.
Yep.
This is after your trip to France. What's
Yeah.
going on internally at this point? You have this experience under your belts. Why did you come back to Philly?
Not the happiest story, but my brother that I told you about that lived in Crested Butte, he was sadly in an accident and died.
Oh, no.
So then I became, you know, I was like, I can't be in Colorado without Josh. You know, it was hard. And my mom was back here and stuff like that. So I was like feeling it, you know, and I was like, but I want to come back.
Yeah.
And I loved Colorado, but I was like more East Coast. There was something about me. I was raised in this area, and I was like, there was a piece of me that I was like, this is my home. So I was pretty comfortable to come back and be with her and kind of be in the area, and kind of, I did that thing, you know, where I think a lot of people boomerang, you know, you go away, you check something out, and then you're like, but I'll go back to where I'm from.
Yeah.
They all know me, blah, blah, blah. So
I can relate to that.
Yeah. So I definitely came back to that area, and I think that's when I really felt my like zone. I was like, I'm going to plant myself here. And to some degree, you know, the time was right for me to dig in.
Yeah.
You know, I needed it mentally.
So it sounds like this is the first time in your life where you're like, okay,
Yeah.
I know what I want.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going for it.
Yeah.
I'm going to start living intentionally.
Yeah.
So paint that picture of what living intentionally looked like and what you were doing.
Let me just see if I agree with that premise first.
Well, you mentioned earlier that I want a job at was a revolutionary.
Victory.
Victory,
Yeah, totally.
Victory,
Yeah.
So
No, you're right. Let's see. I mean, I was definitely living intentionally. I had decided, you know, I had kind of done some cool things and was living in beautiful, like the high country in Colorado and all this stuff. So I was like, I got to work. Because again, you know, remember as a little girl, I was like, I'm a worker bee, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm like, I got to work. I got to have a job. So I came to Philly. I started to look around, and I was like, where can I get a job and go anywhere with it and continue to learn and be kind of elite? So I took a job at the Four Seasons.
Okay.
I was like, that's rock star, you know, that's good. And I've trained myself. I can hang with these people. I put myself in that environment because I was like, I have to survive, and I can take this job anywhere if I do well at it. And I was like, nah, I can't. I did it. And then I was like, corporate, Four Seasons.
Pretentious.
Yes, uniform.
Yeah.
You know, like this wasn't Aimee. You know,
Yeah.
I was like, I own like jeans and Birkenstocks. You
Yeah.
know, I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
But I could still, I could do the shift meetings and taste dishes and stuff.
I think there's something to be said if you are somebody who spent the majority of your career in small mom and pop,
Yeah.
chef-driven concepts. They don't always do systems and processes that well, right?
Yeah.
So it's really good to get into an organization like the Four Seasons. Is that a Hilton? Was it owned by Hilton or Marriott?
I think they're their own
Is it?
company.
Four-
Yeah, I believe.
But high standards,
Yes.
corporate.
Yeah, high standards for sure.
Yeah, and systems. High,
Yeah.
like big on systems and processes, right?
That was enticing for me.
So what did you learn anything? Does anything stick out in your mind as far as how they did things that maybe the branding wasn't you, the soul wasn't you,
Yeah.
but did you pull any of those systems? with you?
Absolutely.
Like
Yes. I was impressed by that actually. And I and this is something I always recommend to people. You have to be in the space in your head to receive. Like you have to buy into stuff. So I always am like, when you need a job, you know, I needed that job and I wanted to succeed at it because I want to continue to have a good career and,
Yes.
you know, do good things. So I went in full hog and I was like, let me, you know, follow. What I think I did learn from that is that ability to conform a little bit and to like, you know, follow the routine and like carry yourself in the pattern that somebody asks you to, and to like model the way they want you to model the programming. And to, you know, I had done a lot of things already at a young age where I was like inventing the show and I was like running the shift meeting and helping people open their restaurant, and I was, you know, being the GM of an opening or something
You were
like
leading
that.
a lot, but you never really had to follow.
Yeah. So I was like, let me follow in and let me do the thing. Let me not break free.
Yeah.
And that was really it was a little bit of a test for me, but I got something great out of that. Like it was the structure that maybe someone like me didn't, you know, because I didn't go to the CIA or a formal culinary school. So, you know, I throw down my cutting board and do it the way I want to. But like working in some of these environments where it's like you do this at this part of the day and you punch in this way and, you know, you dress this way, that did help me kind of see the value of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, having routine, and that's the big thing with these big corporations. It's they focus on the process, and everything is habitual and it's a routine. It's do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. But when you work like that, it might not be as exciting, but everything gets done. Right?
I remember at the Four Seasons, you know, if we ever hired anyone, we always checked references, and we did it very diligently, you know. And it was kind of weird to cold call someone else's restaurant and how was, you know, Joe as a server when he worked for you? And I was like, that's weird. I just like to ask word of mouth and
or
you
what's
know,
my gut tell me about
yeah,
this person?
exactly. Yeah, my gut. I was like, let me live off my gut. And I would learn so much from those reference calls.
Yeah, like what? What were the questions you were asking?
You know, I would just say, you know, one, it would be like, is their resume even honest? Is it true?
Yeah.
Like, did they work for you for the 9 months in
Yeah.
the position that they said they did?
Did they actually do these things that they said they did?
I mean, were they a tournant? You know,
Yeah.
were they a server? No, that he was a busboy, you know? Oh, great. Well, we need a busboy, so I can bring him in as a busboy. That sounds wonderful. I was looking at him for something else.
Yeah. Well, have you ever had anybody who just straight up lied and they're like, no, we don't know who that person is?
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
crazy.
Yeah.
I can't believe the audacity.
Yeah, but I mean, that kind of stuff that a corporation like that does was interesting for me to learn.
Yeah. But at the same time, I feel like big corporations attract those people because they are so big that it's more transactional. Whereas in a smaller community restaurant, like you ask around, you know people, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe I'm wrong in saying that.
No, you are right. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is one of those arguments that's going on now in the restaurant industry related to unions and non-unions and cities and things.
Yeah.
You know, the benefit of restaurant unions, you know, how they would affect this industry, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Four Seasons was really cool for that. And then I wasn't feeling it. I was like, I want to stick with something, and this isn't me. I'm not like, you know, in my best excellent self. And Steven Starr was rising restaurateur in Philadelphia area. He's a guy that was in the music industry, and he had an awesome vibe, and he had maybe 2 restaurants at the time when I was working at the Four Seasons. You know, he's got like 40 now. He was running an ad and looking for GM for his 3rd restaurant, which was going to be called the Blue Angel or L'Ange Bleu. And I responded to that, and then I went and I met with him, and it was like, you know, I was like, I relate to him. This guy, you know, different than me, but I got him. You know, I was like, the way he thought, the creative, I was like, and he was very, like willing. He's like, what do you know? You know, he wanted to hear about ideas. He wanted someone with a voice, and that was always my thing. I like to hear people's voice.
Yeah.
He wanted that from me, and it was a kind of a click. He's like, I need someone like you. I left the Four Seasons and I went on to work with Steven.
So you went from GM of one location to general operations manager for at least 3 locations.
Yeah, I started with Steven right away. I did that opening for L'Ange Bleu.
Yeah.
It was big success in Philadelphia. You know, it was a beautiful restaurant.
This is your first opening too, isn't it?
Yeah, it was actually. No, I had done an opening for Kimpton Group in Denver, actually.
Okay.
This was so in Philadelphia, though. Yes, and the Kimpton Group opening was a little more perfunctory. Steven was already getting known in the Philadelphia region as very Indian, kind of wild side. You know, he'd like to do different creative concepts. So it was a French concept rather than what I had grown up in, which was an, you know, authentic French cafe owned by a French lady who's, you know, from Tours. So this was kind of interesting for me. And so, like, I built it with them, and the place, it was awesome.
So perfunctory, I had to look it up, is carried out with a minimum of effort or reflection. So basically, it sounds like because the Kimpton Group had opened so many restaurants at this point, they had their opening system.
They had a playbook, and I was definitely ready to, you know, get that done for them. But, you know, when I got together with Steven, I mean, we were inventing.
You're writing the book as you went.
Reinventing the wheel, everything. And Steven Starr, you know, he likes to throw everything out the window. You know, he's like, if you're like, make these yellow, he's like, not yellow. You know, I thought I was a nonconformist. You know, he wants to break the rules, and, you know, he's like.
I'm happy you're getting into this because you said that before, like, his style. You said, I like the style, and I was going to be, well, elaborate. What was that style?
Yeah.
And you're saying that nonconformist.
Yeah.
But, like, zig, if everyone else is zigging, he's zagging.
Yeah. You know, he was from the music business. It was his first passion, kind of like you with aviation, you know? So he's flying around in the music industry, and that industry is built differently. It's built on, like, sometimes the flash in the pan, you know, it's built on a big show and a big response. You know, it's not like, let's go have a stoic dinner in a restaurant. Steven Starr likes to make a impact. You know, you go eat and you're going to remember that you went to Budokan or, you know, Park, or, you know, and at the time the Continental, you know, restaurant he opened called Tangerine, and the one, you know, the first one I did with him, the Blue Angel, and then I stuck with him for, you know, for a long time, and helped him open another really cool restaurant called Pod, which is in West Philly. It was really neat at the time. It was a conveyor belt sushi bar restaurant designed by David Rockwell. I assisted on opening Alma de Cuba, which was a really neat kind of Douglas Rodriguez partnership in Rittenhouse Square. Tangerine, which was a big, really cool Moroccan restaurant that he did.
So reflecting back at this time, I know there was a lot for you going on. You got a lot of influence from Steven Starr on just the wow factor, the thinking outside the box, doing things that nobody would ever think of. What were the big lessons on business? I mean, I think that is kind of a business lesson there, just having a unique selling proposition and being about the experience. But what else was he teaching you about business that was new to you at this time? How were you evolving and transforming as a professional?
So, as you know, as a little kid that's like worried about survival, you know, I've always had some restraint. You know, I'm like, again, like I made that Four Seasons decision. I was like, let's be cautious. You know, I was dreaming about a restaurant, right? And I'm always thinking, oh, I could do something, but I wasn't ready, or I didn't know how. You know, Steven took risks. You know, and I think it doesn't seem like a lesson, but you have to take risk to jump into business and to make moves in restaurants. Every time a chef, like chefs, they're not just creative. When they put some food on the plate, there's some risk involved there. And every server or every bartender who makes a cocktail, even if it's a perfect recipe, I mean, they're executing it. And when I go greet a table, I could be walking into a domestic argument, so it's taking risk and building confidence, and he was very, he still is one of the biggest risk taker. He analyzes, he makes decisions, and he makes moves.
So reflecting back at this time, what were some of the biggest risks he took that you got to observe? And do you know what he is analyzing?
Yeah. Again, many of these things are his values and the things that have made him successful, but like his design and his restaurants, he chooses to place a big value on design of the restaurant. And he did that at a time, and still does it now, where other people are like, hey, let my restaurant be a little small BYOB. Let my restaurant be kind of, this cool little rundown shack, and I'll be the best little barbecue place. Steven's like, let me create a design and bring in incredible designers and things like that, because I believe the guest deserves, the feeling of like beautiful design and quality, and I think they'll enjoy that. So like that's something that he pays forward for the guest experience that not everyone would.
And that not everyone's going to be totally receptive of.
Not at all.
Because you might have a vision and you have an idea of how it's going to be received, but
Yeah.
you don't know until you actually pull the trigger on it how it's going to be received.
Yeah. So like, me, like modest me, like taking my jobs and kind of trying to like lead a team and, collect a paycheck and stuff like that, watching someone take big risks like such as that and kind of, go big on restaurants rather than small baby steps. I'm like, I'm going to make a lemonade stand. It's going to be my first restaurant,
Yeah.
and I'm going to sell lemonade.
I lean towards that approach, though,
Yes.
honestly. Start where you can. I think people in their mind, they think, oh, I want to be a restaurateur.
Yeah.
I want to open this restaurant. And they have the Steven Starr vision of the restaurant that they want.
Yeah.
But they don't realize that Steven Starr didn't start there.
Yeah.
He started where he could with his one
Absolutely.
restaurant. And then
Yeah.
he earned that right to get creative.
Yeah.
Right? So you got to take time to get there. It does not happen overnight.
Yeah, I definitely, it does take time, but like we can hold ourselves back too. If you just that space where you feel strong enough to kind of go forward and take a little
Yeah.
bit of bigger risk. And he is someone that pushed on the side of like, go. Like if you feel it and you have a tableau in your head and you have something to present, then do it. Because there's not all the time in the world, and the public is there and they're ready to receive, but that doesn't last forever.
Yep.
So if you're feeling it, that's when you have your energy to do it. So, I watched him with incredible amount of energy push out incredible restaurants, and watching that over and over again, it impacted me, and it kind of blended with this little cautious baby step Aimee. Working with this guy that was going hard. I was like, oh, let me step a little faster, and
So
it gave me some confidence.
You didn't spend a lot of time with Steven Starr, only 2 years, because 99 is when you got back to the States. 2001 is when you left, and you had your 4-year stint with your first business,
Yeah.
Which we're going to get into. But, I mean, reflecting back at this time, looking at how Steven Starr first made an impression on you, any other lessons, specific granular lessons on operations, culture, business in general, any one of those verticals that came out at this time before you opened your first restaurant on your own?
Yeah. I think, it seems obvious, but, the piece of information that's really important is like, restaurants may seem easy because we all eat, and we all did have the lemonade stand, and we all can imagine how to like make the lemonade and do it and stuff. And it looks fun and social and that sort of thing. But the product has to be sick. It has to be awesome. So like the lemonade can't be watery,
Yeah.
And I mean, Steven, I would say that, he never stepped back from the quality of the product. And he and I, there's a thread that we didn't cover yet, but my life I have been in a lot of kind of farm and rural environments where I was raised, and I've grown around. Right? Yeah, I've grown up around just like gorgeous, beautiful food.
And then Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah, you know, I was like in farmers markets, and so ingredient for me really meant something. It was seasonal, you know. Stephen ingredient, you know, meant to him like the best snails. If we were going to open a French restaurant, he came from the perspective of like, if I'm going to serve, you know, a goat cheese salad, let's study the best goat cheese, you know. So even though you think business, and what's the business lesson? His business lesson is really like the product, the quality of the product has to be incredible.
Yeah, so you find the product and reverse engineer from there, I guess. So like I mean, but by doing that, I think there's, I mean, I'll let you answer the question. Like, what is the benefit of working like that? Like kind of like finding something that's the best of what it is, and then building a dish around it.
So there's like there's a level of security, I think, in that, you know, that you're putting the best components together. Mm-hmm. So and to some degree, you know, we were an interesting pair, you know, because in Stephen's world, you know, he would like to have the best, most beautiful lighting, which, probably would be the most expensive. Mm-hmm. In the ingredient, it didn't always have to be the most expensive, but we'd have to like take a focus group to study like what ham is really the most balanced that we wanted to use, or what butter is really making the best scone. Mm-hmm. So like taking an effort to utilize, you know, the time to do that was something that in the end made the business function really well, because we made good decisions out of in the beginning. Yeah. Another really a signature thing from Stephen Starr is utilizing a focus group to make decisions.
Ooh, get into that.
So and I do it, I mean, I use this every day, and I mean, the focus group, by the way, now in the age of social media and Yelp and reviews and stuff, that is part of the focus group. But like back then, and still today in Star restaurants, you know, the focus group of like, if this is a good pizza slice, or if this is a good tomato salad, or if this is a good margarita, is not a decision he would ever make alone. I mean, he's got a gut instinct, and he's seen so much that he could be the winner of all those conversations. Yeah. But he absolutely needs to study it with 20 people.
What's the benefit in that?
It's the voice. You know, every time you do that, it's kind of like the reference call. You know, you learn something from it. And all of a sudden, you know, I sit down and I eat a slice of pizza, and I'm like, you know what I love about this pizza? It's not garlicky. Yeah. And I don't have that garlicky aftertaste. And because of that, it tastes very fresh. And he's like, there's no garlic in it? I didn't notice that. That's interesting.
It's perspective.
Yeah. And I mean, he's super knowledgeable about pizza, and so am I. But it just like, there's food is just, it hits everyone's palate so differently. It's a chemistry thing.
It's kind of like a focus group, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is a focus group, is what you said.
No,
but
absolutely.
You're getting immediate feedback from 20 different perspectives.
Yeah.
And who knows what you're opening yourself up to. But so often we don't even open the doors. We just kind of keep those doors shut. We don't even offer ourselves the opportunity to get all this perspective. And I like to say, like, every mind is like a battery, mm-hmm. right? That mind alone only has so much potential energy. Mm-hmm. But if you connect all those brains together in a focus group, you instantly get the power of 20 brains.
It's a really good way to put it. And now thinking about it like that, I mean, it proves that it's very powerful. Yeah. And you know, what is perceived as quality in the restaurant business is very unique. You know, there's quality based on reputation, like there's quality based on the premium something costs. You know, like this Chardonnay is so amazing because it's made by this fancy guy that only makes 4 bottles. You know, or you're like, this Chardonnay is so great because they make thousands of bottles of it, and it's from the oldest, you know, winery. So like all of these things come into play, and that affects how you perceive it. Yeah. It's really cool when you taste a wine or a piece of food, or you decide if this sofa feels rigid or comfy with a bunch of people, because the coolest thing comes out of it is like the one where you're like, everybody's like, oh, this margarita is delicious. And it's fun when you all like, you come up with like something, you're like, it's that good, right? Yeah. And feels great. And it's awesome when you detect a bomb And you're like, this thing's bombing. No one likes this lighting. No one likes this color red, and it's not working. I mean, think about how much you just saved.
Yeah.
So like from there on out, we don't, in my restaurants, from that lesson, like, we don't serve experiments. We don't serve like ideas.
It's already gone through the ringer before it makes the plate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like the guests, they are, maybe it should be my mantra, but like I say to the staff all the time, I'm like, guys, the guests are so much smarter than us. They are smarter than all of you. They are better chefs. They're better bartenders. They have their home bar. Their palates, they own their palates, right? And they own their comfort level. Mm-hmm. So they own how they feel about the tableside mannerisms you choose to relay, So I was like, they are in charge. So, the guests know it all. So like, the feedback is everything to us.
I love it.
It's not us creating a dish and being like, let's see how it goes in a kitchen between 5 chefs. It doesn't matter until it hits the field.
Yeah. There's 2 more things I just want to compound on what you shared with us. The first one is when you get together and you start having this dialogue around these menu items, you're also developing the story behind the menu item, right? Because you're having all this dialogue, and then you can develop a story, and it just helps you sell the thing so much better when you have all these minds come together, and you can talk about how this plate came to be, and it just develops its own persona, right? And then there's a storyline that you get to tie to that menu item, the details of researching every different butter for a scone, right? And being like, we ended up, this scone has this butter, and we chose that butter because this farmer chose to do. And then that just all that stuff, when you really put energy into the product, there's a story that comes along with it, and that helps sell something so much better, right? And then the other thing is when the focus group, the idea, they say artists really get into this place of flow when they're working together and collaborating on a piece, right? It's kind of like that. But when we can work with a group and somebody offers some feed in, and then somebody else has some feed in, that collaboration, there's camaraderie forms around that. I think this is good for culture. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, like that, I mean, to some degree, like you say, unstoppable, I mean, that's like the hallmark of unstoppable. I talk about it every service, the opposite of that is when someone says they're having an off night. Like when you have an off night, it's like a comedy of errors. You're just like, my timing is bad. Everything's not coming together tonight. But like when you are unstoppable and it's all coming together, that's the thing, you know, and like every table you wait on, it's like, that's perfect timing. And the food came out and they're happy. And you're like, it's the je ne sais quoi. All of a sudden you smile and they receive you better and they've had a good time and they forget they're in a restaurant and it all lives, when the flow is occurring. When it's like the off night, it's like, can I have my check, please? I've been waiting for some water, or like, is my food coming? All these basic banal things that happen in restaurants, they can happen, so that thing when everybody's kind of working together. But if there's the story, if people have their voice in the story, they see the big picture because I'm wear a lot of hats, learn a lot of things, they can participate in the solution better, because maybe they notice that these people their ticket's moving slowly, or maybe the server knows that's too much food and they're going to, be really happy with the lobster instead of the duck. Yeah. It works.
Yeah. I'm loving this conversation. And the year now in our story is 2001. You're a much more seasoned 24-year-old, 24, 25, I'm guessing around that time.
Yeah,
you're breaking out to open your first restaurant.
Yeah, a little older, I think.
Sorry.
We lost some time there, but yeah.
Django was your first not solo, but you opened this with your business partner and life partner at the time, your husband, Brian. Take us to that point. First, why did you leave Star? What was going on?
I had I'd opened that cool restaurant with him, Pod, that I was telling you about with the sushi and that sort of thing. I was vibing on Philly. I loved Philly. Philly is known for the little neighborhoods and kind of small businesses, and there's a unique thing in Philadelphia that liquor licenses are not cheap. So BYOB is kind of a popular.
I was really interested
thing.
in. It seems like you did it once back in 2001 with Django, and you did it again with your second restaurant,
Yeah.
Talula's Table.
So, a little space, a way that a person might start their own place would be to rent a little space
Yeah.
and not purchase an expensive liquor license, and allow wine connoisseurs and people that love beverage to bring their own stuff.
Yeah.
And so I started to look around. I was loving working with Steven, but I started to be, maybe I was like getting a little confident,
Yeah.
and I wanted to do my own thing. And, I started to look around and I was just pushing, and it happened for me really, I'd say, with the space. I found a cool space on South Street, which is a great little hippie neighborhood of Philadelphia, and it just kind of fell together. The landlord and I clicked when I went and saw the space, and I had always been keeping my little folder of ideas, and the restaurant Django was something I created. It was kind of a idea of like food without boundaries. It was named after Django Reinhardt, as a gypsy jazz guitarist. I loved his music, and I used to play it when I would cook around the house. So I was like, this is my little idea. I ran it by Steven, actually. He really believed in it, and he was like, and this is another piece of business advice. He was like, yeah, if you do that, you're going to make no money.
So let's get into why I was going to make no money.
Yeah. So he's like, yeah, that would be great, but you're not going to make any money. First off, there's the investment. You have to pay some, like in this case, I'm finding the lowest investment thing to do, right? I'm going to rent a little place.
Yep.
It's going to have 40 seats, no liquor license. I don't have to buy any wine inventory.
Yeah.
And then we're going to cook food. So like by the time we get tables and chairs and some art, which I love, we probably didn't even need to do, we're decorated and we have a restaurant and we've got the chairs and the people can come, and we get some kitchen equipment. So, I took a $50,000 SBA loan.
I was going to ask, how much did you project you were going to need, and how much did it take?
Yeah, and I think maybe like another 10 on various credit cards.
And you're a saver.
Yep. Yeah. And I had some money. I was totally no problem putting on like 4 months security deposit or whatever was required there. And then I was like, I have an idea, because I didn't blow a bunch of money like I watched Steven used to do on fancy, things.
Design,
yeah. I'm going to have nice wine glasses, because I care about food. Like, that's my jam. So I'm going to have like the nicest wine glasses, and I'm going to have pretty dinner plates, and I'm going to have vintage spoons and some things, because it's going to be all about what's on the tabletop, because that's really where I started. Like, that's what I was loving. I love the experience.
Yeah.
I was less inclined, and I love the people that like populate the restaurants, the staff and the guests. I was less, he always, when I was working with him, he was like the build, and the design and a lot of that aspect. For me, I was like, the magic happens at the table.
Subtleties of the things where he's trying to shock and awe.
Yeah.
You're like slipping in little discreet wow.
And that's where my place was. I was the person who like folded the napkins and swept the floors and kept it tight, So I was like, it's going to be the tabletop. So I would focus on all these little things, and we had about 40 seats, and it was going to be, and again, all these little influences. My restaurant in Boulder that I worked for, Q's at the Boulderado, we used to religiously change the menu monthly there. And I thought it was really fun, and I missed it. It was one of my favorite things, because it kept the staff motivated. When we flipped the menu, I was like, all right, new menu. Everybody has to learn new stuff. So change, like embedding change into the culture of the restaurant, was important to me. And seasonality was important, because I was like, the way I grew up, you eat peaches in peach season. Yeah. And you eat potatoes in the winter.
Yeah.
So those were the things that I knew. They were like the things Aimee, I owned, So I was like, I can do that. So then on my little place, my tabletop, it was going to start really small. We're going to open the doors. And we did. And it was like the most authentic dining experience, and it was like a couple at the time, doing everything. And I would make each little cheese course, and I would come tell the table about it and tell them about my journey to France, tell them about, our passion for where the, squid came from and why we learn this recipe, or, and I was proud of what I'd learned. I wasn't hiding anything. I wasn't like, I was like, I worked for the Four Seasons for a little bit, and we used to do this lovely lobster dish, and I wanted to do my take on it.
Yeah.
Like, I announced it.
Yeah, this goes back to what I was saying earlier.
Yeah.
When you travel and you get to do all these things,
Yeah.
you get to pull from all those experiences,
Yeah.
and it makes the delivery of whatever it is you're doing much more authentic because there's a reason behind it.
Yeah.
Because you got that experience. Like, you were very, like, and I think there's just something there's just something about being able to say, like, oh, this is influenced by this experience or that. And it was all authentic. It was all real. It wasn't some fluff piece that you're putting together. Like, this was your passion coming out.
Yeah, I mean, and I didn't know better to not tell people.
Yeah.
I was like, this is my mom's, cool Ranger cookie that she makes. And we, make it and serve it with our cheesecake, and
People
I was
love
like,
that.
yeah, and it was just the truth.
Yeah.
And I was like, and they're like, where did you get the corn? And I didn't hide it. I was like, we're getting it from this incredible farm, and he comes to the Tuesday market, and he's there from 3 to 7.
Yeah.
So I was like, and you can go buy the same corn.
Yeah.
We just have the room for you to come eat it in a restaurant.
Yep.
So that place was going crazy.
So
it was awesome.
I gotta tap the brakes because you mentioned that the lesson was you're not gonna make any money.
Yeah.
So
right.
So back to that. What is it about this restaurant that wasn't profitable?
Only Steven said it wasn't going to be profitable. Okay. We're going to learn yet if it's profitable. So
is it a volume thing where you don't have the alcohol sales, you don't have the margins?
Yeah.
That's the first thing I picked up on. You're doing everything locally sourced, so it's going to be more on the expensive side.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is more of a passion project. But I think at the same time, you're 24 years old. How old is your husband at this time?
Well, I think I was a little older. I think I lost some years there when you were like, you worked for Steven for 2. Things were a little bit longer.
Mid-20s.
Yeah.
So I feel like if there's a time to go out and hustle and just make a splash.
Yeah.
And it's, to develop reputation and to develop a name for yourself. You can get investors, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like you don't need to be profitable when you have no liability.
It's true.
Yeah.
I mean, I had no bills, I had no bills really. And I think the no money, compares to a person, that's starting to have, you start to have more responsibility and debt, and you take more risk. So if I was making $50,000 a year at Django, that was fine. I was fine. That was good.
Yeah.
That was like, back then, even just serving and bartending, that's what I would have been making. And I'm like, I'm doing my own thing, and I'm building an asset.
Yeah.
And I'm making $50,000.
Yeah.
So that was fine.
Yep.
But I can see how someone would be like, you're not going to make any money. And this would be the reason why, is because if in your restaurant, maybe in your 3rd, 4th year, you're killing it and you're kind of growing that in 60,000, something like that. And the restaurant's maybe, you're paying yourself. So usually you're paying yourself to probably barely break even. Restaurants not making money. Well, then it's like, and this is something I'll tell people about opening your own business. You have to really prepare that for your resume and for your life, because
Prepare what?
you have to, it's a little bit hard, I think, to do your own thing and then go back into the work world.
Why?
Well, if you do it for a while, you spend time. So, again, Django for me, maybe 6 years,
I have 2001 and 2005.
Yeah, maybe a little longer, yeah.
Okay.
But I think we sold it in maybe 2006.
Okay.
But it's kind of hard to jump back in, It's like and you see it. I do it to people when I hire them right now. Oh, for 6 years you did your own recording studio? Are you sure you're ready now to come just work as a server and get scheduled every night, and, work every holiday and that sort of thing? So sometimes it's hard to dip back in.
Yeah.
So, I would say that when you're ready, and you better make sure that you're ready, because you want to be successful, because presumably you want to do it for a while.
Yeah, you don't want to go back.
And then the other thing is, when you do that thing on your own, that's your reputation on the line. So like, here's me, Aimee, many years later, and I'm waiting. I will serve people tonight, many of them that I waited on at Django and that were my first customers at Django. And nothing goes away. No mistake that you made one time and you messed up their reservation. Nothing. If they called you for a favor and they wanted to know if I didn't mind giving them the recipe for something, you can just not call them back.
Yeah.
Everything comes back. So like, your commitment when you jump into business, your commitment has to be 24/7, because if the window breaks in the middle of the night, you know, or 9/11 comes or 2008 comes, you know, you are there and you have to cope with that.
Or 2020.
Yeah, because exactly.
Yeah.
And potentially, you know, again, at Django, we only had a few employees, but potentially you have a following, you have guests, you have staff. People depend on you. The neighborhood got used to you. You know, the city put you in their guidebook. You know, somebody's writing an article on you. So you can't disappear. You can't fall off the face of the earth. So at that moment, you know, aside from all of my other jobs, like, I'm in, you know? And that was then something that was very relatable, again, about me, but something that the city learned to count on. Like, Aimee Olexy she's there.
Yeah.
She's in the city and doing it, you know?
So reflecting back at this first restaurant that was solely yours, with the experience you've garnered now, almost at this point, 20 years later, anything that you would have done different, or any hard lessons learned that kind of set you up for success going forward?
The harder lessons, I think, are, you know, when you're having a tough time, I think whether it's with a staff or maybe a policy or something you've created and it's not working, and I think Stephen was impactful in teaching me this as well. You have to make moves. You got to make decisions.
Yeah, don't let it carry on.
Yeah, and you know, when you sense something isn't right and your gut reaction to things, I don't know any other industry, because I honestly have never done anything else in this business, but you have to respond to it quickly, because
what is the saying? Like, a good decision right now is better than the best decision 20 minutes from now, or something like that.
Yeah, I have experienced that many times, you know, because like the sign of something just in the restaurant business, especially as you get higher volume, you know, if something is salty, right? It's salty like all night. You have to fix it then and there, and you should have preempted it. But like, it's also, you know, there are things like theft in this business. There are things like a bad hire, a person that maybe is not being appropriate to other staff members. I mean, there's things, and you need to make moves on those things, and making ethical, scrupulous decisions in the moment is one of the most challenging things for like a young business owner that has
Constantly
no playbook,
questioning yourself,
right?
Yeah.
Nobody from the state of wherever says, here's how you handle an employee that's bullying another employee, or here's how you handle workplace theft, you know, or a solicitor, you know, yelling at you for serving foie gras, banging on your window and smashing it. You know, like, these things occur. They've happened to me. They've occurred, you know, and it's like, what do you do? You know? And no one's going to tell you about, if you do so well and you're on the cover of the New York Times, right? You're on the cover of Gourmet, how to handle that and how to handle the phone calls. And, you know, this is small time, though, compared to probably what musicians and people in other industries face. But there's no playbook probably for them either. So like, those are the hard lessons, but the thing that you have to learn is like how to be scrupulous at all times, and to make good decisions, and to be like, you know, how to calculate a good decision. You know, nobody gives you, you know, the process for that. So you have to prepare yourself to be able to cope with, you know, like creating a method, you know, to do that kind of stuff.
So when you say scrupulous, I've heard the word. Give me some synonyms. What do you mean by be scrupulous? I know you said make a decision quickly. Like, don't
ethical. You know, just ethical and you know, very balanced, and you know, making sure to be fair and to be, you know, fair and loyal. I got the definition. Diligent, thorough, and extremely attentive to details. Yeah, totally.
So just, I mean, you don't want to. So so it's weird. So you say you want to make decisions. You want to be quick with your decisions. You don't want to wait. If you have a gut feeling, go with your gut feeling. Don't let bad people hang around. Yeah. Just really being extremely attentive to the details.
Yeah.
And not hesitating.
Yeah, and there's a lot of responsibility inside of this I want to be in business thing, you know? I mean, you have to kind of be prepared for the day where, something goes wrong, and how do you do it?
So your husband was your first business partner.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys, did you open the Talula stable together?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. You're no longer together anymore.
Correct.
So I was curious, was the reason for selling Django, was that related to the marriage business? Was there like something going on there?
Well, I mean, maybe looking back, it was not at the time. I mean, we had been in Philly for a while, and the idea was at that point maybe there was a little burnout on the city more. Just in general, which seems odd now that I'm back in the city and craziness and stuff. But, it's hard to imagine, as you age and you go through years in your life, you do different things. You reinvent yourself. So at some ages, I talk to some people that I mentor, and they're like, you can do this for a while and do that. I was like, after 5-6 years in Django, like I was ready. I was smack in the center of the city, and I was ready to move out of the city. Yeah. I was also at that point becoming, my focus on food was becoming very deep. What we were doing in the restaurant was very food based. Yeah. The things of design and status and things, they were nowhere in my life. It was about the experience, the plate, the cheese, the service, the food, the dishes, what was good to serve. And so I was really into seasonal cooking, farmers market ingredients, and I was spending a lot of time learning my product and doing that. So when I moved out to Kennett Square, I was very not only familiar with the area from growing up in that region, but I had an idea that I wanted. It was cool because I was going to be in the mushroom capital of the world, and it's a very agricultural area. It's near Lancaster County, which is Amish Mennonite farms. So for me, I was dialing in my interest. Remember, I was like jack of all trades, Jane of all trades, but now I'm tuning in exactly my passion, and my passion is leaning to the guest experience for sure in the overall business, but it was a small business, and it was about the food and the service and the cheese and product. And I was really dialing that in. So then I was kind of like the idea of maybe doing a business in the country was kind of on my mind, and maybe just some of my smarts about business. We decided to sell Django. We didn't own the building, we just rented it, but we did sell the business to an operator, 2 guys at the time that were partners. They wanted to operate a similar business, and they were stoked to kind of come up with a similar business. They named it, they kept the name and everything, but they bought the business as a package, the concept and everything, but I think they changed the name, and they did well, and they had the space all set up for them. But we sold the success and the goodwill of the business, and we made a little money on it.
Yeah, that's what. So much for Steven Starr saying you weren't going to make any money on this thing, huh? But that seeded your next project, which was a little more intentional. And it sounds like what you were trying to get closer to the food. It sounds like. Yeah. So you were taking the food into the city, but you wanted the food to be in your backyard.
Yeah, I was really, and our clout with Django and stuff, the quality of the food was high, and I was very proud of that. And I wanted to make sure that I stayed very close, because again, the quality of the ingredient, being close to the source. And it doesn't mean premium. We built dishes on lettuce, it meant just the quality in general.
So back to selling this business, any lessons learned about selling a business, having an exit strategy that you learned the hard way?
Yes. This is interesting. And I think this might work for small business and big business too, but I think as the business owner, I think you are selling your business. So I'd think about this when you're making your business, I don't know that anyone knows. It's kind of just like getting divorced. When you get married, you never thought you're getting divorced.
Yeah, it's for life.
So
till death do us part.
Yeah. So, but to be honest, if you are a little bit more realistic, it's not uncommon that people get divorced. Yeah. So being prepared in general is not a bad idea, and it's not a bad thing to do. It's not problematic. It's pragmatic and practical. And I'm a practical person, and that was something that was to some degree aware of, and in business, when I made the business, I wasn't fully unprepared to potentially sell it. You know, I kind of thought that somebody else could enjoy doing this. And so when it was at its most successful point, it seemed to be a good point to sell it.
Yeah. I mean, that's where it's most valuable.
Yeah.
So what about, are you selling just the concept, or are you also selling the systems and the procedures and are those things you have to think
Yes.
of? So get into that when you're selling, like you.
Yeah. So I
'cause
mean,
the business is dependent on you if you don't have all those things. So if
Yeah.
you leave, then you're not really selling a business.
yeah, like, so you do need, and that is what I would prepare for, and that's what I suggest but people prepare for. So like documentation, right? You know, a lot of people make food and they don't make a recipe, right? They make reservations and people come and eat, but there's no reservation strategy. So like I used to always love, I still do those like black and white composition books. You know those things? They're kind of like hard. They're like the little kind of like,
Are they like almost like a cow pattern?
yeah,
Like-
totally. Yeah. So those books, I would write
Journals,
everything.
right?
Yeah. So like, and I would name the composition book, like the reservation booking for like 2015,
Yeah.
you know? And in them, I would like document everything that we did and how we did it and like what area codes people were coming from. I kept a mailing list on the rest of it, you know? So we had, ultimately, when we were selling that business, you know, we not only had the structure, like here's the credit card machine and the processor that we use and the phone number and the
Checklists.
brand and the staff, you
Yeah.
know, and here's the staff plan and how it's organized, you know, and here's how many people we hire that takes to run a night. And, you know, here's some of the holiday menus that we did. And here's some of the recipes for the most classic dishes that, you know, here's how we construct our cheese course.
Yeah.
So like I had composition books for like all of these strategies. However, it seems like very arts and crafts, that really is the way restaurants function, you know? So if somebody needed to like research something, I usually had it documented
Those
in
are
some
usually
way.
found in Google Docs now.
Yeah,
in today's
totally.
age, that's a Google file,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, it sounds like you're not just handing him all these books, but you're also handing him the list of relationships, because it sounds like reservations, you probably had phone numbers, you probably had emails.
Yeah.
So you're selling him, or these gentlemen, the clients too.
Yeah, I mean, and what they call it when you sell, you know, is really the goodwill.
Yeah.
So you're like, a restaurant or a business is valued in like, what is the goodwill
Yeah.
of the restaurant? And there's a value on that. I also, in this case, sold I think it might have been for like 6 months or something, but I was like, I will work here. You know, I'll
So you're
come
selling
and make
like
sure.
onboarding, basically.
Yeah,
so that's
basically.
what was going on between 2006 and 2007, basically.
Yeah.
So you knew that you were selling this to move out of the city to open a new restaurant, right?
No, I mean, I didn't know then, but I mean, I was like, what am I going to do? But I was going to fish around for a location.
Yeah. So I can't believe we haven't even gotten up to like current time now. So you're the one
I
restaurant.
can fast forward.
So 2007 is where
Yeah.
we are now.
Yeah.
That's when you opened Talula's Table.
Yep.
And this is the first of the restaurants that kind of spun the Talula's brand.
Yeah.
Right. So take us to that point. Like,
Okay.
you're out of the city.
I'm out of the
What's
city.
going on?
I'm chilling in this little town, Kennett Square. And I didn't mention her at all yet, but I've now have my baby daughter, Annalie Talula Ray.
Yeah. I love that name.
Yeah. And I'm walking in this town. I'm starting to look for businesses because she's a couple months old. And I'm like, my mom can watch her. I got to work because Aimee works, you know?
Yeah.
I work. And I got to survive. And I walk into this really cute little storefront that's for rent in a town that's kind of like behind the times. You know, there's like a barber shop. But I was started to see construction going on and neighborhoods building in this area.
Yep.
And I decide that my idea that I'd been like keeping notes on for my next business would be a little bit less based on dinner service only, because I'm now a mom and I can't like close
Yeah.
restaurants
Yeah.
and at 2 a.m.
Mhm.
And I'm like, how am I going to sustain in this business? So I work on a concept for a hybrid business that's a gourmet market that's everything that I love about food, because that's where I had come now.
Yeah.
I had been to France and I've been everywhere, and I worked as a bartender and I worked as a chef. So I was like, now I want to do it. I'm going to show people every little thing about food. I'm going to have good coffee. I'm going to have good baguettes. I'm going to have cheese. I'm going to have gourmet products from all over the Amish area. I'm going to make pickles.
So you're like a curator of all the things you love.
And I mean, and I'm not even making them all. I'm like interested in the stories.
Showing other people. I think
And
that's
the
a big thing
makers.
too. Is it's not one of the big lessons I learned, that is that success in this industry isn't about you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, really, I was a hype girl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I did it for Steven. I did it for companies I work for. But I'm hyping like food that I believe in.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I believed in all of the products.
Yeah.
So like, I'm gonna have
You're not
this.
selling when you believe.
Yeah.
You're sharing.
Yeah.
You know, when you believe, you don't have to sell, and you don't have to.
Yeah.
Because it's just there's just a level of I don't know, of comprehension that's going on when you are selling something. You're putting on the face, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking of the list of things that are the benefits of this item. But when you are truly passionate about something, and this is your curated list of things that you love, your enthusiasm, your passion does all the selling for you because it's authentic, and people know that what you're telling me is real, and they can smell that, right?
That thing that you just said is like Talula's table in a nutshell too. The things that are there. We use the focus group method, but like if we sell somebody's peanut brittle, you know what I mean? We all eat it, and we get a sample, and we're like, do we really like it? And we like, did you think about it after you ate it? Do you want to eat it again? And then we sell it.
Yeah.
And then we tell people that story, and it's exactly like that. Like the people that work at Talula's table, the staff are incredible, but they live out of that place. They believe in it too, just like I do. So it's morning, noon, and night, Talula's table in this little town. It's a gourmet shop, cheese shop, bakery, scone store, coffee shop. And then at night, at 7 p.m., we close the market and we serve a farm table dinner.
One course.
Yeah, it's 10 courses.
Oh,
but
sorry.
One table.
One
you mean.
table.
Yeah.
One sitting.
Totally. And we serve one seating, and 10 courses. And it's essentially a monthly menu that reflects the region and the season.
I love that.
And that is the study we do when we make that menu. The chef, Michael Williams, who's awesome, we like taste the courses and we eat through them, and we're like, season, sense of place, sense of reason, what's the history of this? Does this dish is it right? And then we make our menu, does it feel good? And then we launch it.
Yeah.
And when the guests come for this experience, when they come from all over the country, you know, like again, it's not experiments, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
These are things that we've studied and we want to represent. Granted, now it's almost 15 years old, you know, we have a repertoire and we have things that now people ask us for, you know, but we do it. And that place is, you know, it goes on every day, that little magic in that little town.
So you were kind of like the first, I don't know the origin of the prefix menu, like a tasting menu, but this idea, were you selling out? Like, how would you sell tickets? I mean, this is before Talk, right? Are you using Talk now? Like,
no,
how are you doing?
we may. We actually, it's cool. It's a handwritten calendar. It's so homemade at Talula's table. It's so cool. But, I mean, there was like Oakville Grocery. There was a few places in the country that were doing a little bit of cool dynamic hybrid things, but not really. It was totally born out of the idea of like, let's cook a fancy dinner at night to make some money, but have the market, but the dinner would only be like not too late because I want to get home, you know? So it was word of mouth. The first month, it was kind of, the weekends, people just came. They were like, sure, this sounds cool. What is this thing? So people from that region came, and then immediately in about a month, they would come and they're like, when can we come back? And then I was like, well, the menu changes every couple weeks. Why don't you come for the next menu?
Okay.
They started to do it.
Have regulars that come in once a month.
So then they wanted to not miss a menu.
Okay.
They were then foodies. You could bring your own wine, remember? So this area, a lot of people had wine cellars and stuff because we were out of the city. So a lot of people would travel for their wine and they'd have it, and they wanted somewhere they could do this. So then they would call, hey, I came with my friend last week. Could I come next month? And we'd write them on the calendar, and we'd make sure you got to be here because remember, you're the only table, and we live off of this stuff.
Yeah.
So you got to be here for it. And I would just compel them and make sure like that. And it just...
Are you at the point now where like you'd sell in advance?
Yeah.
Where you just basically like, oh, you want to see 6 months from now? That's going to be $200 to reserve. You know, I don't think it's a bad idea.
No, I mean, it isn't.
It's a great way to get liquid.
You should do like, we should have a focus group on this thing because I have an idea like, why does the whole world have to revolve around Saturdays? You know,
it's
Saturdays,
supply and demand, you know? And like that's the whole model of Talk.
Yeah.
Can shift. So basically if you go in to eat on a Friday or a Saturday, that's going to be $300, whatever number, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where the demand is. That same exact experience on a Tuesday can be 150 because
Absolutely.
because the demand is down. I
Yeah.
think, why don't we do things
It's
like
a
that?
really big question for the restaurant industry and music and stuff, like theater. Like, in theater, tickets are way more expensive on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
But restaurants, even in a huge place like my Talula's Garden, we're booked out for Saturday nights, but we have to sell Monday nights.
Yeah, and this is part of what what I mean by inspire, empower, and transform the industry, because I think are an industry built on tradition, and we just don't think outside the box. It takes a dividends, like stock, whatever, Nick Kokonis is to get an outside perspective. Like, why are you guys doing it like this? Like, why not just sell it for more on these days? And it just takes that outside perspective sometimes to like just flip the industry. And sometimes I think it's good. You see, right now you have a lot of people coming into this industry with no restaurant experience, and they're looking at it like, why do you do it like that? Well, that have maybe engineering experience.
I like when people do that.
Yeah, and they just challenge our perception of what right is, and then they kill it because they have a whole new approach. It's a unique selling proposition that nobody ever thought of because it just wasn't traditional, right?
Yeah. My brother's actually an engineer, and he often says something to me. He will say something about, an idea on something, and I'm like, we don't think of it like that in the restaurant business.
Yeah.
So, but it's crazy. That's where you need the focus group, because, if you make the Saturday nights more expensive, then you start to earmark your clientele, and then you suddenly can't. That clientele maybe isn't a clientele that loves veal cheeks.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And then so you can't serve offcuts then on Saturday nights because people who pay $300, want dry aged ribeye.
Yes.
And so then you can't help the farm.
So it's,
you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So like it's not that easy. Like all of a sudden you screw up your own mission. So instead just say somebody again from who doesn't really know it was like, well, it makes complete sense. And you're like, yeah, but when they remember coming to you on Saturday night for $300 instead of $100, they might not think it was worth $300, and they might not come again and again. But whenever it was $150, they loved it, and they will come, and we'll be 15 years old now. If we did that, would we be 15 years old? Or again, can I serve oxtail? For that.
On the flip side, the same question is there might be somebody who loves your experience who you might be able to bring it down to 100 on a Tuesday and bring it more into their budget.
Yes.
Right. So now you're actually opening it up to a broader range of people.
Yeah.
Because you can go way low on the off nights to pull people in, and then you can make up for it on the Friday and Saturday where it's twice as expensive. So I think it kind of it makes you more approachable to more people too, right?
Yeah.
So who knows?
It's interesting. I mean, I love thinking about that kind of stuff, and that is like some real business decisions there because, and again, that's where like scrupulous stuff comes into play because, it's like the sliding scale and stuff, it's day-old bakery products and the fresh bakery products, or it's like, when do you increase the price and what's the number? Like, when is a salad worth $12 and it was $11?
Yeah.
How do you decide?
So is this business model profitable? If you're doing two tables, right? One sitting, 10 courses.
Yeah.
How do you make that profitable?
So if it was just that business, that would be profitable. I think that possibly. Again, because you could back do the math on that and make your food cost, and it's very easy to suss that one out.
Yeah.
To do what we do at Talula's Table, which is a labor of love all morning, we sell amazing scones and baked goods and all these things.
Market.
And it's a very, very dynamic business, and it's one thing where it's like I kind of went in there and I was like, I'm gonna do this and see how it goes for me in the end.
Yeah.
It's definitely my least profitable business by far, and the reason that is not because necessarily of the costs. It's the people. To do the quality that we do, it's a very it's not high end, it's high talent, high skill.
High touch.
And those people are people that you want them to stay, and they've been with me for a long time, and they need to have nice lives. So like Talula's Table for me is a lifestyle. I live it, and it's there, and it's allowed me to build the brand. But it's allowed me to sustain with Annalee and my daughter. We do perfectly fine, but sh I don't think she was comfortably going to college just on Talula's table.
Yeah.
You know, and then, I mean, somewhere in this whole story is, I guess I'm kind of, maybe I was just a hustler when I was a kid, but then it turns out that I'm pretty ambitious, you know, and I liked I like business and I like solving some of these problems. And I was starting to have an eye on Philly, and I would do a lot of events.
Yep.
So it was important for me. I started to do some like cooking events and catering jobs and some things to bring in extra money, and I'd keep myself out there. I kept my relationship with Steven. I would do some consulting. He started to hit me up, and he was like, if you want, you know, after this respite out in the country, you do a big place in the city, we can do it together. I can alleviate some of the work and the financial piece, and you can bring the creative.
So this is really where I was getting excited, and what I've noticed about some of the most successful restaurateurs out there is their ability to collaborate and know lanes and stay in lanes and surround themselves with people who complement them. So there seems to be a synergy that's developed with you and Steven Starr, and you guys complement each other. And I was curious, what do we need to know about these partnerships? How do we go into these partnerships in a way that protects both parties? How do you stay in lanes? How do you communicate lanes? Like, I guess get into the dynamics of this partnership, and if we wanted to recreate it ourselves. So I think the partnerships is the future, but I don't think a lot of people know how to enter into partnerships and what makes a good partnership.
Yeah, definitely not, because, you know, one form of partnership is marriage, you know, friendship, families and stuff, and these are really super challenging things.
Yeah.
The restaurant industry teaches you about this because working together so intimately with so many people under stress, like you start to adapt to being in a good partnership. Like, you know, in a restaurant, you're like, I'm the server, and this young woman is my bus girl, you know, and you're working together to like solve the night. So to some degree, I think, you know, I was always kind of an understanding and good partner, because that's what teamwork is like what we do in this business. Generally in a restaurant, unless it's some crazy teeny thing or something. So I was adapted for that, and Steven was too, because he's in this business, so he was used to it. Now granted, he's has a lot of experience, ton more than me. He's older than me, and he has an incredible background. So I was lucky, you know, he came to me and he helped me through a lot of those things. He's like, here's a good plan, you know. But again, my gut feeling was good, and I was like, I show up. Like that, no matter what happens in life, like I always show up, you know. And so like there was and I think he had seen that with me. Once he watched me do 2 successful businesses now, you know, Django and Talula's Table, he was basically also smart on his side of the partnership, that he was like, she has something to offer. And I was like, I didn't have any secret thing like, oh, maybe I'll do it for 2 years and see how it goes if I make some money. I was basically like, if I do this, I got to be there in the middle of the night, you know, when somebody breaks in. And I have to be there when there's no chef and there's no people to hire. So I was like kind of ready to do that. I was willing to do that because
Was your kid older at this point?
Yeah, she's still little, you know, she's in elementary school, but I have my mom who's amazing. She's like, you know, every amazing thing in the world, you know, she's just there for me. So she's a huge factor in Annalee's life. So I was ready. I had some support system with her, and I wanted to do something. And I also was like, when you age in this industry, it's kind of like being in sports. You need to do it because you're not really doing it when you're 70.
No. And you have to get it done early, and then you have to build people around you so they can continue to go with your vision once your body is kind of like not there anymore.
And I mean, it's fun to not think about that, but it does hit you quickly if you don't think about it. So all of a sudden you have kids and you have responsibilities and stuff, and you're like, you know,
not 25 anymore.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And that whole thing where you're like, my body is not a temple. You're just like, I've been running food all night long, and I'm at every table, and it's crazy, and it's 90 degrees out, and, you know, so you have to think about that. And I think the group of people that I would most tell to think about that will be, I mean, definitely the GMs and stuff, but it's the chefs. It's like chefs. I mean, being chefs, you guys are, and ladies are incredible. You're like sports figures, but it's larger than life. You know, you're working on a line and you're under stress, and you know, it takes years off your life, some of them.
You got to learn, eventually you got to go through that pivot of doing the work and working through people.
Yeah.
And you got to learn that because you, like you said, your body will not, eventually you're going to have to retire, right?
Yeah, I mean, and there's dopamine here in this business. So like the work-life balance is hard because you want that feeling of success and gratification.
Yeah.
So you go back in, and then,
rush.
you know, you're 33 and you're 36 and all of a sudden you're like, crap, do I have money in the bank? Do I have these things?
So we've covered Talula's Table, Talula's Garden, which is your rendition of Talula's in the city.
But bigger.
Yeah. And then we have, and you do the same thing there where it's market during the day, and then you do one course at night. Same chef?
In Philly?
In Philly, as in outside the city?
No, different chefs. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And then in 2017 was your most recent, which is the Love.
Yeah.
So we're at almost present day now. Anything that has happened over the past 5 years, and I guess almost 10 years since coming back to the city, big lessons. Big lessons, things you learn the hard way, failures, things you think, lessons you can distill before we start to wrap up.
I was still willing to take more risk, so I started to take some risk. Stephen and I found a gorgeous location up in Philadelphia in Rittenhouse Square, and I didn't want to name another thing Talula's because I don't want to confuse guests too much. And a thing I tell all of my staff, I'm always like, guys, it's the love. Make sure to touch everything with the love. Make sure to keep focus on the love of what we do in our industry. So I decided to name a restaurant, very risky, in the city of Philadelphia, and to name something The Love, like it sounds like it is like a 70s song or something, One
of my calzone concepts is the pockets of love.
Coming out of the loving oven. So I was like, it's the love, though. I was like, I stand by it. It is the love. This is what we do. It's about the love, what we do in this business. And, I still feel it today. When I opened the Love, it was very at the tip of my feeling like this industry is about the love that we put into it.
I love that too. It's opening the love.
Yeah.
When you open the love every day.
Yeah. So that was the mantra that I opened that place with, and it was the staff. They live it, they understand it, and it's like a heavy burden to carry, And so the things that we do there are they really have little touches to them. They are soulful. They are things that aren't challenging. It's very warm. It's very cozy. So Talula's Garden really embraces the season and the ingredients. The Love really embraces lost recipes and warm, cozy food, and the soul in the dishes for sure. The business principles, with the Love, I would say it's another step. You're bigger, and you have to figure out, when you're someone like me, who I'm like, it's being authentic and tableside and with the guests are so important to me. You have to figure out how to do it. And you really, I think I recommend writing it down. When you schedule stuff and you write things down and you document, like I did in those little composition books, kind of like writing in a diary when you're going through hard times in your life, it gives you something to reflect on and to kind of map out and to remap. Because you can't run away, and I can never run away from these businesses, So if I have to kind of figure out how to moderate, I can use some of my documentation to say I scattered all over on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Maybe if I concentrate more time at Talula's Table, I'll get more impact. So I'd say some of that is important. In restaurants, we're creative, we're hands-on, we're talkative, we're social. Don't forget to try to take some advice from other industries and to be literal and to write. And maybe it's my writing background from when I was a kid, but the writing down the story of your day in some formal form of journaling can be really helpful in this industry. Because I think some people, you may have heard this before, but it's like dog years, restaurant years. you work with somebody in a restaurant for 3 years and like you knew them for a
'Cause
decade.
You going through hell every day.
Yeah, you work a
really,
double.
Yeah, exactly.
So like the journal of working in the restaurant business, today I'm going to talk to 1,000 people today.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to hear some crazy stories and they're heavy sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm talking, people are going through crazy stuff and I have staff that have real needs, but I got to remember them and follow up. So it allows me to fortify like a memory or a thing to follow up on.
Yeah. Are you just old fashioned pen and paper?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I use a great tool called Momentum. It's a Chrome plugin where every time you open a new browser, instead of going to like a Google page,
Yeah.
it's Momentum, which is like an image in a to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
So that you're constantly pulling up your to-do
Yeah.
list, which is really powerful.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's like,
Just having that list and
I love
constantly and
that.
prioritizing like what's the most important thing. You
Yes.
put the most important and urgent things at the
Yes.
top, and then you just constantly are reevaluating urgency and importance, and you
Yeah.
and the list never goes away. And I think that's something that people are always like, the list never goes away. Just accept it, that the list never goes away.
Yeah.
It's constant.
But that makes you necessary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's your purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, that's your thing. You're going to go touch a couple things that you're going to have successes with,
Yep.
and that is your fulfillment.
Yeah, and one thing I'm going to make the attempt. I've been good about developing routine in my mornings, and writing is definitely one of those things that I want to start being better about. Is just taking maybe to start with 5 minutes every day just to get the most important thoughts down, and then maybe add a minute once a month, just until you get to the point where you're writing down like an hour a day. You're writing,
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge thing that I do not do, but it's almost like you're manifesting it by bringing it back to the surface, because it's something I've been saying I want to start doing. And this is my last interview of this road trip, so now I have to go back home and start writing. So thank you for reinforcing that. Anything we have not discussed up to this point that you were hoping to discuss to get out that hasn't come out?
Interesting. I've never been good at that, like knowing if there's anything that I just like need to put out. I'm so, I live so much in the walls of my restaurants.
Yeah.
I am inside them so much that, I hope their value in the world is just that experience.
Yeah.
I love that. It's amazing to me when the experience is at the table, and like this conversation that we have, but we're having it with some wine and some food.
Yeah.
And we did that, and we didn't even know there was a restaurant going on.
Getting ready
like we
for
do now.
Yeah, there's a restaurant. We're getting ready for dinner service. The music is going on. I think they are in the process of turning it down as we speak. You can see there's a little bit of panic going on amongst the staff.
Yeah, that's even loud for the guests.
They're like, oh yeah, what are we doing? But
I didn't touch really well on being a good partner, and a good partnership and stuff. I will. I mean, over the years, I'd say that, young people in the restaurant industry, like the term like finding a lawyer or having a lawyer, it seems like scary or something, or like I talk to people about having health care and they're like, oh, I don't have health care. Like these are classic conventions of the world. And as soon as you take these steps and you engage a lawyer maybe or somebody that is a support system for opening a business, and you use some of these networks, you learn so much. Don't be afraid to do those things. Spend some money to have a conversation, to explore an idea, or maybe it could be a real estate developer because you want to look at a piece of real estate.
Yeah.
But
I mean, even at the same time, all these relationships that you engage in, whether it be with a lawyer or a realtor or some of these scary things, like they are your partners too. Yeah. I think it's just relationship management. These are people. Yeah. These are people who are better at things than you are, and it doesn't need to be scary. It's a good thing that you're going through, and it's not to. We think lawyer, you immediately think negative things, right? But the truth is, what you're doing is you care about this partner, and you want to make sure you're going into this relationship with both parties being taken care of. Mm-hmm. Meaning, we have communicated everything that we don't even know what to communicate because this isn't our vertical.
Yes.
So having a lawyer come in, they just they force you to have those hard conversations.
Yeah.
That when the shit hits the fan, which it inevitably is going to, there's a plan. Mm-hmm. So you're not screwed. You're protecting yourself, and you're protecting this person that you're going into business with. So I hope you love them, right? I hope you want the best thing for them, right?
Expose yourself, network, expose yourself, jump out there and like get into stuff. Because I mean, every time I talk to anybody, when they do something like that, they attend a thing or they go to a free thing or they read, like educate, energize yourself to like do the diligence before you make moves, but like get out there and do it,
So
go
we're
for
about
it.
to get into the speed round. I know you guys are opening in 10 minutes. Something I want to start doing with all my guests, I say that the mission statement is to inspire, empower, and transform the industry. Give me one way you've transformed or one way you want the industry to transform going into the future.
I mean, I really believe in the connection of the maker and the restaurants. And so, transforming that insofar as like working directly together. So like paying futures or paying into farms for the following year. Like next year, we're going to pay you in advance for your peaches next year. So we can plan them for our menu or your cheese, or, we can kind of pay it forward to some of our producers out there. I think the quality ends up back on the plate for the guests, and the relationship is stronger. And it's something to look forward to for the staff to plan. So we always are working on that, but it's something that like when we plan, it's really fun when it materializes. Yeah,
awesome stuff. We are back, and the first question I have for you is, what is your it factor, a habit, a trait, a characteristic you believe most contributes to your success? What is your biggest strength?
My big strength? I'm super energized. I'm like never tired.
Not sitting for a long time.
I am not tired. Yeah, I never get bored,
I love it. What is your biggest weakness?
Weakness, I'm slow to make change. I have to study things for a minute.
What is one question you ask or thing you look for when you're building your team, when you're doing an interview? What are you looking for? What are you asking?
I'm like, do you go the extra mile? Are you happy to like do the help the little old lady cross the street?
Yeah.
Does that something that feels good for you?
What's your biggest challenge today?
Today, commuting, parking, urban issues, things like that.
How are you dealing with it?
Not well.
Share one code of conduct or behavior you teach your team. This is a core value, a way to be.
I have to like smile, be positive, like have a positive spin on things. When you're around a bunch of people, it's just like negativity just does nothing.
No, not at all. What is one uncommon standard of service you teach your team? So this is something that's common within your businesses to go above and beyond, but not common throughout the industry.
We actually, if I don't see somebody that looks like they're having an ideal experience, like they're not chowing down, guzzling their Bloody Mary, we usually approach the guest and say like, is your Bloody Mary too spicy?
Yeah.
We check and we make sure like we
get ahead of it.
Yeah, we are not, I don't want people to spend an hour or two with us and not be stoked.
Yeah.
And it could be a mistake. They maybe like ordered the wrong thing. We don't mind that.
Yep. What is one book that's a must read, or what is one business book that will make you a better person or restaurant owner?
It's so good. You have to read Sanjay Gupta's Keeping Sharp. It's like not specifically just about business, but it's about keeping your brain sharp. So, this industry, you have to be sharp. And it's so much stuff he shares is so applicable to aging in this industry.
And I believe that is on Audible. It is. So if you want, you can get that book on Audible. Head over to audibletrial.com/unstoppable. Do you listen to audiobooks?
Yeah.
Is it a game changer?
I listen to podcasts. I love them when I'm driving.
Yeah.
I'm like a magazine person. So like a great magazine article or podcast is like a perfect kind of, I feel like I'm part of the experience when I do that.
Audiobooks for me are game changers. I think for a lot of people in this industry, because we just don't get the time to sit down.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, so I mean, if you are making that excuse that you don't have enough time to read, try audiobooks. It will change your life. Turn your car into a university again.
Yeah.
And you are supporting the show if you use that link, audibletrial.com/unstoppable. Thank you in advance. What is one service you've outsourced, or so this is something like a lawyer or like a designer or a marketer or whatever. It's a group of people who do something really well that you outsource instead of doing it in-house.
It seems easy. I think a lot of people think it's no big deal, but like PR, is a skill.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah. I mean, being able to have somebody spend time to make sure that they represent your business in a way, and also in streams that are, they get to know you. So again, like that's building a relationship.
Yeah.
So for me, like I build a relationship with PR because I want them to know what Talula is and the love, and Aimee Olexy. I want them to know what I'm about.
And who's your publicist?
Nicole Cashman. So
Is there a PR company?
Cashman. The firm is called Cashman.
Is that Cashman Associates?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's, okay. Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
What is one piece of technology you've adopted within your restaurants for better communication, more efficiency, more profitability, anything along those lines?
A piece of equipment.
Equipment, anything, software.
Interesting. It's interesting, like I have these, wine and liquor driven restaurants, but we just put in these drink machines in the restaurants.
Okay.
And they are like amazing. Like
What are they?
The Ferrari of like frosé machines.
Okay.
They basically like they're like Paco Jets. They emulsify beverages to make beautiful frozen drinks.
And that's Paco Jet.
Yeah, well, it's the machines are Taylor. They're a frozen drink machine, but and Taylor is the producer.
Okay.
They're made in Pennsylvania, but I think
And that's a big trend right now, like kind of pre-made frozen drinks that you can just put it on to a tap.
right. So it seems like a shortcut. However, there's a history of frozen drinks. You know what I mean? Like the idea of a frozen daiquiri or frozen margarita is actually something that restaurants took away. They're like, poo-poo.
Isn't like water ice like a big thing
Yeah,
in Philadelphia? It's not
yeah.
a drink, but
Right. No, it
Yeah.
absolutely is. You said it right, too. Water ice.
yeah, I got some practice. Somebody taught me how to do it right.
So like, I put them in and it's helped the bartenders. It's kind of a new thing. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
That's a neat, I don't know, technology. My places are really low tech.
Yeah.
We're
But there's something to be said about that too. Like keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
You know, I think sometimes we try to get an edge by taking on all this technology. We just complicate things almost, and then technology doesn't play well, or there's like automation that like overrides something that you thought you did. It can be a headache, right? This is the last question. It's a doozy. Get ready for it. If you got the news, you'd be leaving this world tomorrow. All the memories of your work in your restaurants would be lost with your departure, with the exception of 3 pieces of wisdom that you could leave behind for the
Okay.
good of humanity and for your legacy. What would they be?
oh my gosh. That's too heavy. You got to
It's-
take that off your list.
One way to think about it is if you could leave 3 pieces of wisdom behind for your kids, what would that be?
I mean, they're so, you probably hear it all the time, like be kind and those sorts of things. But I mean, I take that one really seriously,
Be kind. Number
Yeah.
one.
I love in the restaurants, I think people forget to be generous,
generous.
We're constantly like giving things away to bring smiles to people. And then I'm just like, be curious,
curious.
I'm constantly like, why do we do that? Are you sure we do that? Are we
Yeah.
still doing it that way?
Yeah.
I like question stuff. So
Well, that's how you constantly improve.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
be kind, be generous, be curious. I
Yeah.
love it.
Good.
Awesome stuff.
Nice.
Thank you so much. We wrap up every chat by calling somebody out. That's how I try to find the majority of my future guests. So who do you
Wow.
respect and admire in this industry? And if they were a guest on my show tomorrow, you would tune in to listen.
Wow, that's a great opportunity. I mean, it's hard because I'm going to think of people that are like right in my zone. But
Yeah.
man, I mean, I do have an in with them. And if you could sit down with Steven Starr,
I would love
he
it
is
to
the
make
shit.
that happen.
Yeah.
We were supposed to actually get together on this trip, but something happened with the
Yeah.
schedule, and we had.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to reschedule because I
Yeah.
was coming here for a specific time.
Yeah.
But he is absolutely on my radar. I think that there's a trip back to Philadelphia in
You
my
should-
near future.
You should do it. Yeah.
And I would love to connect with Steven Starr. And I'll be sure to reach out to you to make sure that happens.
Good.
And how can we connect with you? What's the best way to connect? If we've loved the story, we're thinking about maybe moving to Philadelphia, we want to come join your team.
Yeah,
or we just have
definitely.
questions. What's the best way to connect?
The my Tallula's Table in Kennett Square is kind of the mothership of my businesses. So Tallula's Table is where I spend my mornings, and I'm there. So our Instagram for Tallula's Table, which is TALULAS TABLE. So Tallula's Table is really where I'm kind of always, you see a little bit more of the grid of what we're doing in this brand.
Yeah.
All of the restaurants have great Instagrams that we use a lot. Obviously, they have websites and things like that. But I'm like a crazy reachable person. People call or email me or call the restaurants and say that they can email the restaurants. And I like, if you want a recipe or
Somebody
you want
does answer the phone because I've been hearing. I was here.
if you want an interview, people are amazed, but I show up.
I love it. That's one of our core values in Restaurant Unstoppable Network, by the way. Show up.
Yeah.
That's half the battle, is just showing up.
Yeah,
really.
I learned so much by being present in there and like with the thing that I set out to do.
Aimee, I've loved this conversation.
Me too.
Thank you
Awesome.
so much. There is no
Yeah.
questioning. You are unstoppable.
Thank you.
Cheers.
I'm
Thank you.
feeling it. Yeah.
Awesome.